Hi everyone, I am Jennifer Cross and I am here for a feminine moment with three of the Andelin sisters, Dixie with two of her sisters, Christine and Ginny, and they are going to be speaking us today about how Fascinating Womanhood impacted their marriage. So Dixie, would you like to introduce your sisters?
Yeah, this is three of the four. This right here is Ginny. She's a very dear sister. She doesn't live that far from me, about an hour away. And this is Christine, my other dear sister, and she lives in Idaho at the moment. And this Ginny has 15 children.
Wow.
They're mostly grown. She still has a few left, and Christine has 9, who are all grown and
Wow.
raised and all that stuff. So these are very dear sisters of mine, and we get together, all of us sisters, every year in Santa Barbara, where we are right now, where we lived with our parents, and where Fascinating Womanhood really started becoming a big thing. And so we're here for a reunion with our husbands today. They're out deep sea fishing, so we thought this would be a good time to do this.
Well, we all appreciate it and thank you so much. And I can tell you just from being a fan of your mothers for so long that the other women on the group are going to see that are going to have quite a moment seeing all three of you together. And just thank you so much for your time, all three of you, and answering some questions that we have. And hopefully some will be coming in as we're recording. But this video specifically is going to be about how Fascinating Womanhood had impacted your marriages. Who wants to start?
Why don't we start with, does anyone want me to say mine? I don't know, they've heard a lot from me.
No, we do.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm the oldest, so maybe I should go first. I used to take it for granted because I always had it. And then as I got older, I realized that our mother had a Fascinating Womanhood success story, but none of us daughters did. And the reason we didn't is because we never knew anything else. She taught these principles from the time before we even liked boys. She was teaching us about admiration and making a man number one, and sympathetic understanding. She was teaching us all these things, and so we sort of thought everybody knew this. And when we grew up and saw some of the problems that happened, that I thought, how come they don't know this? I realized that it's because it wasn't so common.
Yes.
So when I think about what Fascinating Womanhood has done for my marriage, I can't even imagine what it could have been like if I had not had these principles, because I have seen friends, even relatives, who struggled in their marriages, and I think, well, why are they doing that when it's so obvious that this works better? That, you know, it's even kind of hard to describe, because there was no success story moment for us. And all of us sisters, including a sister-in-law who's married to my husband's sister, my husband Bob's sister married my brother.
Right.
So they're here, but they're not here right now. But same thing. We all have really strong marriages. We've all had these principles, and we've been married a long time. And so I don't think it's just luck. I think we were fortunate to have learned these principles really early on, about just even masculine pride, things like that.
I have to say, is the first time when I read your mother's book in the early 90s was when I actually learned about men. I was early 20s, something like the 24, 25. Can you believe that? To have lived that many years, I was already married with a baby or a child. And that was when I first read anything that told me about men.
Being feminine.
Yeah. Or that, or any of that. So it's really, that's why she's just, it's so brilliant. Everything that's been written and timeless. So anyway.
So maybe we should ask Christine.
Yeah.
Okay. Christine has got a different personality than me. All of us are different, and we all live Fascinating Womanhood in our own ways that are unique to our personalities. And Christine is very bubbly. She was a cheerleader in high school. She's an eternal optimist, and she's great. So
okay. Well, Dixie will say that, but we're all human. So we may have this foundation of Fascinating Womanhood. I think we all go through times where that humanness comes out. And I can think of a time where I was particularly noticing my husband's faults. and, it didn't make me feel very happy. And so I was very concerned about that. And then I realized a valuable principle, and that is you can't love someone you don't see.
I mean, that you don't really know?
Yeah, well, that you're not watching. I found that I was complaining or I was feeling like what he should be, and I was never really watching and seeing the man that was right in front of me.
Oh, that's great.
I had to just stop for like 2 years and just witness this guy's life and see how he was, because he thinks entirely different than me. So, he's not what you would call the eternal optimist, but he's he's the
especially when it comes to politics.
But he is the realist that keeps me safe.
Yes, and that's
great balance for you.
Yeah, he's a huge balance for me, and so that was a really big deal for me. That really helped me, and it was that foundation, of accepting a person at face value that I kind of came up against and realized, okay, how does that play out in my life? I once heard that looking at a person is a little bit like looking through a telescope. And if you look at someone's faults, it's like the telescope. You're seeing it really huge.
Right.
And that's all you can see. And so you have to kind of back out.
How did you do that?
And see the whole person. And I needed that at that point.
How did you do that? How did you kind of train your thinking to do that?
I just said I'm going to observe for 1 year.
And did FW help you decide that?
Yeah, it did, because I realized the foundational principle that we have is accepting, and yet since we're all human, we have to go through those steps of how we're going to have that work in our life. And for me, it was just watch him. Just watch him. And I thought to myself, you cannot love someone you do not see. And so
just watch him and say nothing. Without judging.
Observing somebody like you're curious.
Yeah.
It's not like you're sitting, the two of you in a room and just staring at him. You're watching him as he goes about his life, his day.
Yeah. And I think women going through Fascinating Womanhood need to understand that principle, because they can get in an active state instead of an observing state. Sometimes they get a little anxious, like, I have to make this better. What can I do in order to make this better? And sometimes we need to sit and observe and learn in that way instead of actually trying to do it. And it puts us in a little bit more of a sense of peace, where this becomes really part of us, when we can sit back and take those moments to just watch. And it was pretty powerful to see. And I must have said that every day that whole year. You cannot love someone you cannot see.
I love that.
And I really realized I needed to take more time to see.
Yeah, see who he really was.
I was raising 9 kids. We're constantly evaluating what people are doing.
Yeah.
We can have that move into our husbands too. And maybe that was more of a position I was in. Yeah.
Well, women are maternal by nature.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we kind of, without really wanting to, we kind of end up sort of mothering our children, telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to raise them, because we're used to raising children, and it's not what we want to do, and it's definitely not what they want us to do.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You're talking about sort of a sense of curiosity when you see them, like, what am I looking at here?
Yeah.
Instead of a judgmental thing, more of a curious.
Instead of evaluating how I thought he ought to respond to something, actually watching completely free of any judgment, and like you say, in curiosity to see how he was doing it. I couldn't even understand how he was doing it unless I took that time to just watch.
Great advice. Thank you so much for that. So that's one of the major, the looking to his better side, the admiring was one of the things that you really applied in your marriage.
Well, yeah, because once you see them, then you can really appreciate those things that specifically, Fascinating Womanhood gives you a general thing, but you need to know specifically what really matters to your husband. To some husband, it could be something a little bit more intense that he needs that admiration for. And if you don't see how he's kind of like, yeah, curiosity, watch and see who he really is, then you can actually appreciate him more, and in a very sincere way, because you see and you know. When he locks the doors every night, you know, I kind of take that for granted. But
Keep you safe.
to keep me safe. But he really appreciates it when I notice that. Just a simple thing. Hey, thank you for locking all those doors. I feel safe now, because he that's the way he feels very strongly. That's how he participates. Is he does keep me safe. And if he leaves for you know, travel or something, he always says, "Be sure you lock the doors."
Yeah. It's sweet.
And, you know, he wants me to lock the doors, but he also wants me to turn around and say to him, "Thank you that you always do it when you're here." And so I do that because that's a big deal to him. It's a small thing, you know.
And how long have you been married?
71, 46 years. 46 years.
46 years and 9 kids.
9 kids, 41 grandchildren.
That is crazy. Wow.
Believe it or not,
what a
Jenny has
blessing.
me on grandchildren.
Yeah, Jenny has me beat.
All right, Jenny, you tell us how the principles have helped you in your marriage.
Great. I'm going to tell you the most important part for me has been understanding men, that part. But before I go into that, I want to just tell you a little bit about Mom. Because as Dixie said, when we were children, I remember her taking us aside, reading to us out of David Copperfield and Thackeray. And
Yeah.
she taught us so well, but mostly by her example. Dad got the biggest piece of pie, and she wanted us to have things nice for him. Let's pick up the house and have things nice when Dad comes home. I looked down the row at church and Dad was holding her hand. I learned these things by example.
That's so great.
And we had the security of parents that loved each other, and so when you grow up with that, there's no competition between men and women. Mom's her earnest desire was to make him happy.
Yeah.
And his desire was to make her happy. He called her pretty one, or so he just had loving names for her. Sorry, I'm emotional, but
A little story about Mom and Dad, because you were talking about sitting in church and they were holding hands. Well, my dad, he had really big veins, really big veins. And so I would sit there in church and I'd kind of poke at him and watch him go in and out. And, you know, as a little girl, I'd just be holding his hand and turning it and doing that. And I once asked my mom, I said, why does Dad have such big veins? And she says, "Oh, don't you know the bigger the veins, the wiser they are?" So then I would hold his hand in church and I would poke it and I'd go like this and I would say, "He is so high."
yeah.
Just little simple things like that that made us as children learn to appreciate our dad like she did.
Gosh, this is so wonderful. And I'm emotional too, Jenny. So it's okay. It's all good, because to hear this, I don't think this is the side of Helen that the media ever got. And it's been my desire, since I've seen some of the things in the media that were not about the book at all, and to get the real truth about your family and who she was and you guys, all of it. It's got to come out because the world needs it badly now.
Yeah, they loved each other, and we were the recipients of that.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we did in our marriage, I think, just came because of example. But definitely, like during my marriage, and I've thought back, particularly about understanding men. I have 9 sons too. It's very helpful to know what they're thinking and the things that they need. They need admiration. They need to be accepted for who they are, and not that you're trying to change them. They need to be loved for who they are. And so when rough times happens, as the rougher sides of our personalities come out, sometimes we're able to use those principles.
Yeah.
Just remember that you love him and that you're you want to make him happy. And that's what Mom always did. Looking to the better side. Make him number one. I have a lot of children. I tried so hard to remember that, because children are very demanding, but your husband needs to be not last on the totem pole of everything, and he needs to, there's nourishment that we need, there's nourishment that he needs. And I am so grateful for those principles in my life, that it made it so easy to be able to figure out what I need to do. Well, here's a problem, what do I need to do? There's always an answer. Mom always said, you have the key to your happiness. And it's very true. That's actually a Christian principle. You are not dependent upon others. You really are the key to that. And no matter what failings people have or so forth, if you're doing the right thing, you'll have peace in your life.
Mm-hmm. So true. Thank you, Jenny, so much for that. And what a great segue as you're talking about the key into Dixie's book, Timeless, and the fact that women are the gatekeepers to civilization, kind of playing off that.
It's really true. We are.
Yeah.
We're not everything, but we hold a huge key.
Yes.
And we need to learn how to understand it and use it for the betterment of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think of her chapter on inner happiness, and she talks about the sources of it.
Yeah.
She talks about creativity. Don't you remember when we wrote poetry, and she would always encourage us to sew. She encouraged us to draw. She would get all the kids around, and she would give us like little drawing lessons. She noticed those things.
Well, on rainy days, she had this giant roll of butcher paper that she got. It was cool because we could tear off a big piece, and we could draw and color, and she had watercolors.
And you were all homeschooled?
No. This was California. Even back then, it was even worse than now. She was not allowed legally.
I did not know that.
No, she tried for years to get us to do a correspondence school. The state laws did not allow for that.
But, when I decided to homeschool, it was kind of hard for me to kind of make that decision. It was kind of an odd thing to do.
A lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and not really anybody was doing it back then.
Mm.
But it was a memory of Mom that had me do that, because I thought to myself, because I enjoyed school. As Dixie said, I was pretty social. I enjoyed school. It was not a negative experience for me. But even in that, when I was looking at my kids, and they're quite a bit like me, I thought to myself, okay, if I had to choose between going to school and being with Mom, what would I choose? Instantly, it was to be with Mom.
Oh.
And so I just, right then, I decided I was going to do it. And because, why wouldn't kids want to be with their mom?
No, Jenny homeschooled too.
I have a sweet little vignette to share about Mom. Dad was, one time they were going out of town, he was teaching me the combination to the post office box. He wanted me to collect the business mail. And he said, Jenny, it's really easy. You only have to remember 3 letters, BHB, and it stands for Beautiful Helen Berry. Berry is her maiden name. He said,
yep.
Beautiful Helen Berry. This was
easy to remember.
He says it's easy to remember. That was so typical. I didn't even think, oh, that's cute. I mean, it's obvious he's like that, and that's the way they were with each other.
How wonderful! What a blessing. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing that. Dixie, is there anything more you want to add to the impact of Fascinating Womanhood?
Yeah, well, based on what these guys said, I didn't mean to give the impression I never had to practice any Fascinating Womanhood. And like Christine said, understanding men, making them number one. I always knew those were important, and I always pulled them out. But it doesn't mean by any means I never had to kind of regroup myself and say, wait a minute, I'm getting off track here. I need to do this or do that. But I knew what I was doing wrong. And that's the advantage that I felt that I had.
Yeah, that's great.
This is not, I have always felt so lucky that I got to marry Bob. Yeah. And so early on, I thought, I've got to make sure I deserve him at all times, because I've always thought that. I've always thought he is the best thing ever for me.
what words would, I'll ask all three of you, what words would you have to say to the woman who maybe just picked up your book or just heard about it and is feeling very discouraged, like, you know, maybe she's looking to divorce or separation, or a husband who's cheating, and now we have, you know, online cheating with pornography so accessible. What would you say to her? You know, because all of us, most of us, I should say, haven't grown up with that example, with those things ingrained, you know.
Do you want to say something? Then I will, engineer.
Perfect. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's really a tough one, because sometimes there are rats in the world.
Yeah.
It's hard.
You know, you have to admit that.
Fascinating Womanhood is always based on the principle that you're married to a basically decent person who is flawed but wants to be a good person, wants to do what's right.
I think the biggest damage in there is to lose faith that there are good relationships between men and women. And so I think that Fascinating Womanhood stands as a hope.
Yeah, because you're right. That's a great way. You're losing faith.
You've saved thousands of marriages. Sometimes women, you get the impression you have to be perfect. Not at all. Sometimes women have just practiced a few principles and it has turned things around. It doesn't mean like that's all I ever have to do, but even just a few things.
So true.
A man can turn it to going a different direction.
Or, you know, and the reason I bring this up, because sometimes there are rats, and sometimes you do need to separate yourself, you know.
Protect yourself.
Yeah, you have to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, you don't have to feel like all men are that way, or that all relationships are that way. Or you may not even have a picture in your head of what a marriage can be like. So that's why I say Fascinating Womanhood offers a hope, because when you get into it and as you start reading it, you begin to create these images and these pictures in your head of what a possibility could possibly be.
Yes.
And to me, that's what hope is. We need to be able to paint a new picture for women, that it is a possibility. And I think that's, to me, the biggest thing that we do.
And you don't have to be perfect.
Yeah, now.
And he doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
That's
why you understand each other.
Well, I was going to say to those women that you mentioned, some people resent a book that has all the emphasis on you doing and learning. I feel just the opposite. If I want to improve something, I want to know what can I do, because I don't want to be out there changing someone. And as Dixie said, these
doesn't work anyway. It doesn't work.
These principles are based on decent people, not perfect husbands, but people that are not evil. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Some husbands or men might really need, they might have a criminal mind. So we're going from this basis that they're decent, but maybe, as we all are, flawed. But I love the idea that here's some principles that I can do. It's not dependent on someone else. It's in that way. It's very much like the teachings of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Because he said, if you have aught with your brother, go to him, even if it's his fault. And these he taught in principles of the way that we can improve. It empowers me to feel like I can do something about it. And if I'm doing the best that I can, then you can feel at peace about it and move forward. And as Christine said, to know that these marriages are possible, I think is enough to bring a little light into women's lives.
Yeah, and it does. That's for sure. And that's why for the book, for me, was like revisiting an old friend time and time again, as I would maybe need to be reminded of a principle or two here and there. And I love how you have said the hope of FW, Christine. That's wonderful. And focusing on the change in self. In my coaching practice, I've seen a lot of women come up against that. The principles of FW really stir up emotion in a negative way for women, because of course they feel like, well, it's all up to me is the number one. And then the second one is they don't like the idea of the childlikeness being maybe a solution. And you just really changed that, Ginny, in how empowering that is to actually not have to worry about what the other person is doing. And we have the key. We can change things.
We have a very large key, because even though women say, well, what about men? They should do this and they should do that. Well, that's true, but women tend to be more sensitive to relationships than men. We are more interested in, we're less tolerant of a kind of a crummy relationship than men are. We're more sensitive to it, and we're more relationship oriented, and so we will tend to work on something quicker than.
What would you say to the woman though who gets discouraged if she tries things and, you know, because I come across that too, and there's
the number one thing I find, Jenny, is to go back to the principles: accepting a man at face value, understanding men, looking is there anything that I might be doing that might be kind of making this more difficult.
Just go back to the basics.
To the basic principles, especially the ones on the masculinity.
Okay.
That's true, like admiration, accepting at face value, understanding men, making him number the man, and then yourself. Are you feminine? Do you are you wearing pizza clothes? Are you, you know, pizza clothes? Yeah. Don't wear pizza clothes. Are you doing? What are you doing? What are you not doing? You can't change another person, and we all try. It must be part of our human nature. I don't know. It doesn't work. It's like beating your head.
It doesn't work, right?
Somebody to try to change you.
No, you don't want to be a project for somebody.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is in using the word try, because if we think we're trying fascinating womanhood, that's a sense of doing instead of a sense of being. Yeah. To me, you kind of need to kind of read all of Fascinating Womanhood, get that picture, and say, and awaken that femaleness in you.
Right.
And when you awaken the femaleness in you, you will find you have more instincts than you ever thought you did.
That is beautiful and well said. And why Dixie and I both agree. When I started teaching this before I really met Dixie, I created a class called Become Captivating because I wanted to work on women's self-esteem before we even talked about FW, because you cannot live the principle unless you love yourself and see your worth first. And then in talking with Dixie, I was like, light bulb moment. Oh my gosh, she's making this wonderful book, by the way, everybody. Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Generation, coming out soon.
Yeah, and the whole first part is on appreciating who you are as a woman, connecting with
the value of women. Yes.
Understand how valuable women are in this world. Women as feminine women, not just a gender. But
yes.
Feminine women. When you connect to that, you'll feel a whole different sense of power in being female.
Amen to that.
So.
Jenny, any more to add? Anyone? Christine?
Not unless you have a question. So.
Okay. Do you guys mind waiting 1 second while I see if we do have a question?
Sure.
On the Facebook page, real quick. Hang on. Oh, here we go. Okay, we do. How to introduce FW to someone who associates themselves with modern feminism?
You know, I taught a class once. A gal put it together for her particular church, and all the women, almost every one, had been raised by a feminist mother, and they had all those feelings. And you know why they all turned to it? Because they were about ready to lose their marriages.
Yep.
It wasn't working, and they weren't happy. They were trying to be mothers with that philosophy, and it wasn't working for them. And they didn't realize the difference of what they were being taught and what was available to them. It was weird. There were like 30 of them, and every one of them had been raised feminist. But once they got that picture and they realized that it wasn't a ninny, but it was something very substantial, and that there were solutions to their problems. I think it's when they see the solutions. That's why we need to tell our stories. You can't give a principle without a story, because it doesn't give a picture. So as we give these pictures and you listen to 100 of them, it's like learning a song, and you sing that song over and over again. Pretty soon you don't need the words. So if they can connect with the people that are in Fascinating Women, they hear it. This type of person did this and this did this. They're going to start to accumulate that, and that will start giving them the solutions that really they don't have right now. They don't have the solutions, and they're actually looking.
Well,
and they're afraid to go to this area sometimes because they may not think that they will end up feeling like a whole person.
Well, we're not trying to convince somebody they need Fascinating Womanhood. When people have problems and they're searching, millions of women are searching for answers to these problems in their marriages. When they ask and they're feminists, they're more willing, if people are asking questions, they're more willing to want to know the answer.
Yeah.
Rather than
Right.
going and trying to convince people of something they don't.
And these women, they started with one woman who she came across the book and she was angry when she first read it.
Yeah.
But,
Typical
like
response.
so many people, they began to see those solutions and think about them and realize they're
Mhm.
more true than what they think. It went from mouth to mouth. One woman saying, "Hey, it is that hope," and we pass it from one person to the next. So whoever asked the question, they're in a pivotal position to just simply say, have you tried? Instead of tried this, have you thought about this?
Mhm.
Thought about how your husband might feel when you say that. Think about some of those things, because often we just try to do stuff.
Yeah, so true. Great point. Jenny, anything to add to that?
I agree. As far as this person wanting to introduce it, they've got to be thirsty to drink. They
Ask the question.
ask a question. Yeah, if somebody's not searching, I don't know that you can introduce it necessarily.
What I think happens though is girlfriends, our friends share with us the problems they're having in their marriage. And say this woman has a friend who is sharing problems in her marriage. However, she knows her friend's a modern feminist. So maybe that's where the question comes from.
Yeah.
How do you introduce the principles to someone who associates with modern feminism? I think, is this person complaining of their marriage in the first place? If they're not, leave them alone. I mean, but if
Maybe they had to start. Maybe they had to start by just simply asking them, what do they think modern feminism is? I think they would be shocked at the answer that woman would give.
good question.
Yeah, if you look at the fruits of modern feminism.
Oh,
it's
yes.
good. So
Yeah.
that's a kind of an easy argument there. There's
A
not a
basic-
lot to show for the
Basic distrust of men. And not only that, to keep in mind, anytime you or I allow ourselves to be in a victim position, it weakens us.
Yes.
Because you feel, a victim feels powerless, and
Mhm.
you're not powerless. And so we can't afford to be victims. And feminism makes women weaker because it keeps us in a victim status. I don't have this, I need this, nobody's giving me this, this is unfair. And so it keeps us down. It isn't proactive.
That's great. I actually never heard that perspective, but that is so true.
And that's sort of what I was thinking of when you asked the person, what is their perception of what feminism is? And they're probably going to be saying something like, I want to be treated with respect. I mean, really?
Which is true, but
that's really what we are able to let them know how that naturally occurs. We don't have to demand it.
Exactly. That's what the principles do. That's so great.
Yeah.
There's one more question. It says, how can we make FW attractive to young ladies that are surrounded by feminism? Oh, it's another feminism.
It's interesting because, and I'm just amazed because we've had a lot more women apply to be teachers.
Yep.
Almost all very young.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. And we've got this publisher that's publishing Fascinating Womanhood in Russia. They're translating it right now. And we asked them what got them interested. And they said, because the young women in Russia are sick and tired of the divorce and breakup rate. They're going back to traditional values.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's like Christine said, if they're not asking, you're not trying to change another person, but if they are expressing pain or concern or dissatisfaction, they may be more likely to be open to these timeless principles.
Yeah, or how about the question, how's feminism working for you right now?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true, because in my experience and as I've grown my practice, the women that I'm working on with FW are actually getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I thought at first I heard it in Russia, and I thought maybe it's happening in the United States.
It is. Well, I shared with you.
I was not aware of it until I thought, we're getting all these young women in their early to mid 20s
Yes.
wanting to teach this.
Yeah. So great. Awesome. I don't, let me,
There's a lot. There's a lot of dresses now.
Not a lot more than there was
Yeah.
even just a few years
There's
ago.
kind of a revivalness of even dresses, which means they're trying to express something.
yeah.
They don't know, and I think that we've gone through a period of time where the only difference between a man and a woman was their sexual difference. Women are kind of disgusted to be the only difference is sexual, and it's your sexual
There's so much more
attraction.
to us than
Yeah,
that.
the femininity. You know, they want to understand that they don't have to look like a hooker to be
Thank
blunt.
you.
You know, they don't
Yes.
have to appeal in that way. And
Yes.
they don't want to, but they still want to feel like a woman.
Right.
Well, you know, that's a great place for a woman to be, to open her up to what femininity really is. And
There's a great power in femininity, and so many women
Yes.
have lost it. We just want them
We lost it.
back again, and power, not masculine power, but feminine power.
Amen. Yes.
You can learn a lot about that in Fascinating Womanhood.
Jenny, you look like you're going to say something. Final words.
Oh, my sisters are expressing it all, but I just, maybe as a final testimonial, the principles of Fascinating Womanhood have made our home a happy home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped me to
All of ours.
raise my sons and daughters those principles. It isn't only man and woman. It's knowing how to treat your children.
Yes.
Help them develop masculinity and
femininity.
and femininity.
and
And
you know, on those younger ones, you know, my daughter, she has older teenage daughter. Those girls come over, and they're asking for Fascinating Womanhood classes.
Wonderful.
Because they notice that she gets a lot of attention and she doesn't even try.
Yep.
And so they literally are begging to have these Fascinating Womanhood classes from my daughter for, you know, their friends. You know, this is my granddaughter who's having this experience. I think the women are much more hungry today than we anticipate.
All right. I have another question. You guys doing okay? You want to cut it short now?
Okay.
You're okay. All right. I have some questions. The book interested me because of feminism. I had one woman studies class, and I'm planning on taking more, possibly even pursuing a minor. I've had MS Magazine since I was a kid, or Miss Magazine. I was the only female in my military squad for 17 years, one of two in my section for over 12, graduate of CWIT, etc. Yeah. I would have been in the Women's March on Chicago if she hadn't had a drill. She read Gloria Steinem, Angela Davis, Marcella, and many more. I could go on and on. So I'm curious as to why this is an issue. Oh, that's an interesting kind of counter to feminism.
What is an issue?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, maybe it's why
maybe feminism has been just what she's longed for, or maybe it's been fulfilling for her, is what she's saying.
Is that what you said?
hang on. Let's find out what she
People
means.
actually define feminism in a lot of different ways, and they're looking for fulfillment and respect in lots of different ways. So what we may feel that feminism is, or a definition coming out of the 60s, is, I think it's very different than what it is today.
Okay, you know what? She has not read Fascinating Womanhood, and she is very, very new. I know her. I know this woman personally, actually. So let's address that question another time, because I think it's a really good one. I think there's a lot of people on that closed group who are silently, not quite sure they want to read it, because it does stir up. The minute you pick up that book, if you were raised like me and the women 10 years younger than me and the women 10 years older than me, it makes you mad first because of the way we were raised. And then you realize, as your marriage is failing, as you can't find a boyfriend, as no relationship you've ever had is not working out, you realize I have to do something different. You read it. So we will address that question when we have a little bit more information from her. I think
that one.
it's a good one. It really, really is.
Right.
But anyway, this has been lovely, wonderful. I'm going to be sending you guys another link real quick so we can do another couple of videos. And for everybody watching, thank you so much. This has been a feminine movement with 3 of the 4 lovely Andelin sisters, Christine, Dixie, and Ginny. Thank you so much. My name's Jennifer Kloss, and we'll be back again. Please keep comments and questions coming below. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.